Assalamu alaikum. Here we are with the next lesson, that is first year at Harrow, written by Sir Winston Churchill. It's an autobiographical essay, as Sir Winston Churchill has depicted his own story here. In this essay, Sir Winston Churchill writes about his experiences as first year student at college. He writes about his admission, exams, learning Latin, Greek, and English languages. Sir Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill, this is his full name, was born on 30th November 1874 and died on 24 January 1965, was a British politician, army officer, and writer. He was Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from 1940 to 1945, when he led the country to victory in the Second World War, and again from 1951 to 55. Apart from 2 years between 1922 and 1924, Churchill was a Member of Parliament from 1900 to 1964 and represented a total of 5 constituencies. Ideologically an economic liberal and imperialist, he was for most of his career a member of the Conservative Party. As leader from 1940 to 1955, he was a member of the Liberal Party from 1904 to 1924. Of mixed English and American parentage, Churchill was born in Oxfordshire to a wealthy aristocratic family. He joined the British Army in 1895 and saw action in British India, the Anglo-Sudan War, and the Second Boer War, gaining fame as a war correspondent and writing books about his campaigns. Elected an MP in 1900, initially as a Conservative, he defected to the Liberals in 1904. In H. Asquith's Liberal government, Churchill served Baldwin's Conservative government, returning the pound sterling in 1925 to the gold standard at its pre-war party, a move widely seen as creating deflationary pressure and depressing the UK economy. There is a very famous quote of Mr. Churchill. I would like to quote it before you. By being so long in the lowest form, I gained an immense advantage over the cleverer boys. They all went on to learn Latin and Greek and splendid things like that, but I was taught English. We were considered such dunces that we could learn only English. Mr. Somervell, a most delightful man to whom my debt is great, was charged with the duty of teaching the stupidest boys the most disregarded thing, namely to write mere English. He knew how to do it, he taught it as no one else has ever taught it. Not only did we learn English parsing thoroughly, but we also practiced continually English analysis. Thus I got into my bones the essential structure of the ordinary British sentence, which is a noble thing, and when in after years my schoolfellows who had won prizes and distinction for writing such beautiful Latin poetry and pithy Greek epigrams had to come down again to common English to earn their living or make their way, I did not feel myself at any disadvantage. Naturally, I am biased in favor of boys learning English. I would make them all learn English, and then I would let the clever ones learn Latin as an honor and Greek as a treat. But the only thing I would whip them for would be not knowing English. I would whip them hard for that." Unquote. As far as Harrow School is concerned, it is an independent boarding school for boys in Harrow, London, England. The school was founded in 1572 by John Lyon under a charter of Elizabeth I and is one of the original 7 public schools. Let's start with the lesson. I had scarcely passed my 12th birthday when I entered the inhospitable regions of examinations, through which for the next 7 years I was destined to journey. These examinations were a great trial to me. and this is written by Sir Winston Churchill. So obviously he is telling us his own story, when he was made to join a college after his 12th birthday. Scarcely means hardly. Like he says that I was hardly 12 years old when I entered the inhospitable, not so friendly regions of examinations, like I was made to join college, through which for the next 7 years I was destined, I was forced, I had to, I was bound to journey. These examinations were a great trial to me, and these series of exams were a kind of test for me. The subjects that were dearest to the examiners were almost invariably those I fancied least. Then he says that the examiners, they always liked those subjects which I have never liked. Like I had no attraction, I had never liked those subjects which were always fancied means liked by the examiners. I would have liked to have been examined in history, poetry, and writing essays. The writer, Mr. Churchill, says that I always wanted to be examined in subjects like history, poetry, and essays because these were my favorite subjects. But the examiners, they always liked Latin and mathematics, and the will prevailed. The will here means that whatever the examiner wished, that was fulfilled. Moreover, the questions which they asked on both these subjects were almost invariably those to which I was unable to suggest a satisfactory answer. Like when they asked me questions about Latin or mathematics, so I was not able to give any satisfactory answer to them. I should have liked to be asked to say what I knew, like Mr. Churchill says that they should have asked me those questions which I knew. They always tried to ask what I did not know, when I would have willingly displayed my knowledge, and when I wasn't able to answer them correctly. So what they did, they sought to expose my ignorance. They always tried to show my ignorance here means that I am incompetent and I'm unable to answer a question, or I have failed in certain exams. So they have always exposed, or they have always told others about my incompetence. This sort of treatment had only one result: I did not do well in the examinations. And this was the reason, like I wasn't able to do well in the examinations. This was especially true of my entry examination to Harrow as well. Like when I went to for the entry exam to Harrow, the headmaster, Mr. Weldon, however, took a broad-minded view of my Latin prose. He took a broad-minded view. That means he was quite broad-minded, and he was quite liberal, and he was open-minded as well. So he looked with an open mind towards my Latin prose. He showed discernment in judging my general ability, and he showed discernment means that he was not so he was not so interested in my judging my general ability or overall view. This was the more remarkable because I was found unable to answer a single question in the Latin paper. Although I wasn't able to answer even a single question in Latin, but my headmaster, he was so liberal and he was so broad-minded that he did not bother about it. I wrote my name at the top of the page, as mostly the students they do. I have seen many students, like whenever they start answering the question paper, so they always start writing, first of all they write their name. So what the same thing he did, he wrote his name on the top of the page, and then he says, I wrote down the number of the question as 1, and then after much reflection means after a long while and after thinking for a long time, I put a bracket around it, like around question number 1 he put a bracket and made it look like this. But thereafter I could not think of anything connected with it, like I wasn't able to answer any question was either relevant or true, like I was not knowing any answer which could be relevant or which could be the best answer. Incidentally, accidentally, or by chance, there arrived from nowhere in particular a blot and several smudges. Like I spoiled my answer sheet, I spoiled my paper. I do not know from where A stain appeared on the paper, a blot or a spot of ink appeared, and there were many spots around it as well. I gazed for 2 whole hours at this sad spectacle. I kept on looking at this sad incident or sad scene. And then merciful ushers are the people who help the students in collecting their things, and especially answer scripts and papers, and they take it to the headmaster or the teacher. So kind of peons. Some kind peons were there, and they collected my piece of fool's cap. Fool's cap is the piece of paper or the answer script with all the others, and carried it up to the headmaster's table. It was from these slender indications, minute, tiny, small indications of scholarship. Scholarship actually here means intelligence or wit, that Mr. Weldon drew the conclusion that I was worthy to pass into Harrow. Now, Mr. Weldon, who was such a nice person, that he drew the conclusion that in spite of all these flaws, I should be granted admission. It is very much to his credit, and I owe him a lot. It showed that he was a man capable of looking beneath the surface of things. It means that he had seen me not just towards my appearance, but he has checked my inner self as well, and he came to know that I am competent of doing so many things. A man not dependent upon paper manifestations, so he did not look towards my answer script or any degrees or any other thing. I have always had the greatest regard for him, and this is the reason I have always respected him and had great regard for him. In consequence of his decision, as a result of his decision, I was in due course placed in the 3rd or lowest division of the 4th or bottom. Like I was placed in the 3rd or the lowest division of the 4th or bottom. The names of the new boys were printed in the school list in alphabetical order, and as my correct name, Spencer Churchill, began with an S, I gained no more advantage from the alphabet than from the wider sphere of letters. Like according to my name commencing with alphabet S, I could not get any advantage, so I was placed at the lower or lowest or division of the 4th bottom. I was in fact only 2 from the bottom of the whole school. Like there were just 2 names after me, and these 2 names, I regret to say, I'm sorry to say, that they also disappeared almost immediately through illness or some other cause. I continued in this unpretentious situation. Unpretentious here means not so showy or gaudy, or I was living like in a low profile, down to earth situation, because I was made to sit in the lowest division situation for nearly a year. Like I was made to stay there for a year. However, by being so long in the lowest form, like I stayed there for a long time, I gained an immense advantage over the cleverer boys. Like since I was staying in that one class for a long time, so I became cleverer than the cleverer boys as well. I gained more knowledge over them. They all went to learn Latin and Greek and other things, but I was taught English. We were considered such dunces. Dunces means very stupid, foolish people, that we could learn only English. Like since we were considered as stupid or not so intelligent, so that's why we were made to learn English only. Mr. Somervell, a most delightful man, he was a very lively person to whom my debt is great, was charged with the duty of teaching the stupidest boys like me, like the foolish boys like me, the most disregarded thing, namely to write mere English. Like he was made to teach us English only, and I was made to write English or to learn English only. He knew how to do it. He taught it as no one else has ever taught it. Not only did we learn English passing thoroughly, we also practiced continually English analysis as well. Mr. Somervell had a system of his own, and he took a fairly long sentence and broke it up into its components by means of black, red, blue and green inks, like he used to write on the board with different colored markers, and he used to split the sentence into various parts of speech like subject, verb, object, relative clauses, conditional clauses, conjunctive, disjunctive clauses, etc. Each had its color and its bracket, and around each part of speech he used to write, he used to put a different colored bracket as well. It was a kind of drill, it was a kind of exercise, and we did it almost daily, as I remained in the third year 3 times as long as anyone else. Like, I spent 3 years in one class, so obviously I had 3 times as much of it. I learned it thoroughly. Thus I got into my bones. Here means like I was so, like it was English was all, it went into my bones. The essential structure of the ordinary British sentence, like I learned the ordinary British simple sentence so very well that nobody else could learn it, which is a noble thing, which is a great thing. And when after years my school fellows who had won prizes and distinctions for writing beautiful Latin poetry and pithy Greek epigrams, pithy means very witty, and epigrams, any quotable quote or wise saying, had to come down again to common English, they used, like my friends, after learning poetry and Greek pithy epigrams, and they used to come to me obviously afterwards for common English to their living or making their way. I did not feel myself at any disadvantage, like I was not at any disadvantage after learning English, because it was quite helpful to me. Naturally, I'm biased in favor of boys learning English. Like he says that I am in favor of those boys who love to learn English. I would make them all learn English, and at the end he says that I would love everybody to be learning English, and then I would let the clever ones learn Latin as an honor and Greek as a treat. Like, first I will teach them how to learn English, and then I will let them to go and learn Latin and Greek as a treat, means as a bounty or as a gift or as a prize. But the only thing I would whip them for is not knowing English, and I would like to whip them or beat them if they do not know English. There is a list of difficult words and meanings. I have compiled it for you. I hope you can read it yourself and go through it. And after the words meanings, I have tried to bring some of the difficult questions for you as well for discussion. Like, there is a very important question here: which subjects were dearest to Churchill and which ones were fancied by the examiners? Churchill liked the subjects history, poetry, writing essays, and liked to have been examined by those subjects. On the other hand, the examiners were partial to Latin and mathematics, and their will prevailed. Like, whatever they wanted, they got it. Moreover, the examiners asked us such questions in which he was unable to give a satisfactory answer. Churchill was not a dull student at all, but he was examined in the subjects which did not match his taste. Many of us, or many of you also, you can relate your stories with it as well, because so many of you are forced to study science, medical science, or some other subjects which you do not like, and some they want to study literature, but they are not allowed to study literature, so you can relate yourself with it. There is another very important question which is always asked: in what way did Mr. Weldon take a broad-minded view of Churchill's Latin, or why was Churchill admitted to Harrow despite his poor performance? Like, he wasn't able to write even a single answer in the exam. Still he was allowed admission. Why? Why does Churchill think Mr. Weldon considered him to be worthy to pass into Harrow? So the best answer is Churchill got admission because the headmaster of Harrow was capable of judging the general ability of his students. Churchill says about his headmaster, Mr. Weldon, that it was much to his credit Churchill had left blank paper, only his name, number of question in bracket, and several smudges with blot were present on the sheet. But it was from these slender indications of scholarship that Mr. Weldon drew the conclusion that he was worthy to pass into Harrow. According to Churchill, his headmaster was capable of looking beneath the surface of things. He was not a man dependent upon paper manifestations. So Churchill gives full credit to his teacher, who took broad-minded view. It was much to his credit. He gave decision in favor of the writer, and Churchill always had a great regard for him. There's another question which is always there. How were the names printed in the school's list, and at which position did Churchill's name appear? The names of the boys were printed in the school list in alphabetical order, and as Churchill's correct name, Spencer Churchill, began with an S, he gained no more advantage from the alphabet than from the widest pair of letters. He was in fact only two from the bottom of the whole school, and these two boys disappeared almost immediately through illness or some other cause. So his name was the last one, and he continued in that unpretentious situation for nearly a year. There's another question. What was Mr. Somervell's system of teaching English? Or what do you know about method of teaching of Somervell's English? Mr. Somervell had a unique method of teaching. He taught it as no one else has ever taught it. Not only did the students learn English parsing thoroughly, but they also practiced continually English analysis. Mr. Somervell had a system of his own. He used to take a fairly long sentence and broke it into its components by means of black, red, blue, and green inks: subject, verb, object, relative clauses, conditional clauses, conjunctive, disjunctive, etc. Each had its color and its bracket. It was a kind of drill. They did it almost daily. So in this way, essential structure of the ordinary British sentence got into his bones, and he thinks that which is a noble thing. So by this method, the students learnt English thoroughly. There's an interpreting question as well. Churchill says that the examiners asked questions which he could not answer and not those which he could. How would you describe your experience with the examiners and examinations? I have given my answer, but you people can add your views and your answers to it as well. The questions which they asked on both these subjects were almost invariably those to which I was unable to suggest a satisfactory answer. I should have liked to be asked to say what I knew. They always tried to ask what I did not know. When I would have willingly displayed my knowledge, they sought to expose my ignorance. This sort of treatment had only one result: I did not do well in the examinations. Why does Churchill think Mr. Weldon considered him to be worthy to pass into Harrow? Mr. Somervell, a most delightful man to whom my debt is great, was charged with the duty of teaching the stupidest boys the most disregarded thing, namely, to write mere English. He knew how to do it. He taught it as no one else has ever taught it. Why does the author consider his situation at Harrow as unpretentious? The author considers his situation at Harrow as unpretentious because he places at the lowest. He was placed at the lowest bottom of the list. He is not like his brilliant fellows, and he likes to be examined in poetry, essay writing, history, English, whereas the examiners are in favor of Latin and mathematics. Even the questions on those two subjects are almost invariably those he can hardly answer satisfactorily. Whenever he wants to display his knowledge, examiners exposed his knowledge. Why were Churchill and others such students not allowed to learn Latin and Greek? Churchill was not allowed to learn Latin and Greek, and because he was not capable of learning it, so that's why he was placed in that. He was made to learn English only. So Churchill says that he would whip those students who do not learn English well. What do you think? He learned English passing thoroughly and practiced English continuously. This went a long way in helping Churchill in practical life. His brilliant fellows had to come down again to learn English to earn their living and practical use. Thus, English gave him an edge over other fellows. Churchill advocated learning of English rather than Latin and Greek, mainly because, unlike dead languages, it helped him a lot in learning, living, and earning a living and making his way. Do you think Churchill is also interested in telling his story, or there is something more to it? I think Churchill is not only interested in telling his story, he also wants to justify students' complain as well when some examiners don't follow the required standards and ask irrelevant or out of syllabus questions. You have this writing assignment once you are done with the story, with the essay, you are supposed to write an essay on your experience of learning English or any other subject in school, and that gave you an advantage or disadvantage over other subjects. Try to bring humor into it if possible. Thank you. Goodbye.